Imagine making a World War II movie so insultingly inaccurate that it causes the 34th US President and European Theatre Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower himself to come out of retirement just to hold a press conference denouncing said film for its egregious historical errors. Well, unfortunately, this is a scenario we do not have to merely imagine, for it was precisely what happened after the film Battle of the Bulge was released in 1965, and there is no better way to educate on the full extent of its falsities than by jumping straight into correcting all of them. The movie opens with a Cessna 01 bird dog conducting reconnaissance. This plane is a post-World War II model, having made its first flight in December of 1949. It should be a period-correct Piper L4 Grasshopper instead.
December 1944. British and American armies were on the threshold of victory. Stretched across half of Europe, the Allies gathered themselves for the final assault on Germany. To the north stood Montgomery's 8th Army.
The British 8th Army at this time was still in Italy and was not even under Bernard Montgomery's command anymore, since he was replaced by General Sir Richard McCreary in 1944. It was the British 21st Army Group who were to the north.
To the south, Patton's 3rd.
Patton's 3rd Army did not play a major role in the beginning of the Battle of the Bulge. Bradley's 12th Army would be more appropriate to mention here. The weather in December 1944 was notoriously bad, with heavy fog and high winds. Not only was it in stark contrast to the fair clear skies we see throughout almost all of the movie, but it also meant that Allied pilots could not fly until the weather began to clear on December 23rd. The film itself even tells us this when we get a weather report read out in a later scene.
A low pressure area over northern Europe starting December 16th, low clouds and fog which will ground all aircraft.
The main reason for the weather being so wrong throughout is because the filmmakers decided to shoot the movie in the warm Mediterranean climate of Spain. This also means that instead of seeing the rolling hills and dense forest of the Ardennes in Belgium and Luxembourg that the Battle of the Bulge occurred in, we are presented with the semi-barren and rocky terrain of the Sierra de Guadarrama mountain range. Both crewmen of the airplane are wearing wool jeep hats usually only worn on the ground. They would have pilot helmets when flying. The protagonist, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Kiley, is wearing a quite out-of-place tanker jacket, while the pilot, Joe, is wearing a nylon MA-1 bomber jacket that was not introduced until the 1950s. Both crewmen should instead have period wool-lined bomber jackets considering it is winter. The Recon plane begins chasing a Mercedes-Benz 230 Chevrolet B staff car carrying the main antagonist, Colonel Martin Hessler. The vehicle is being driven near the front on its own with the roof fully down, despite the ongoing cold during the winter days in December. The car also rather comedically makes the sound of slipping tires on tarmac, even though they are driving on a dirt road. Hessler's valet, Conrad, has the outdated pre-war shoulder straps with the pointed ends on his greatcoat. He also has no Waffenfarbe piping on them for some reason. This is another one of those movies where everything has been translated for English-speaking audiences. All of the Germans speak English.
I've told you before, never leave some motor running. Petrol is blood.
But sometimes randomly blurt out German too.
Löscht sofort das Feuer! Macht schon! Beeilt euch!
The local Belgians speak English instead of French.
We are looking for someone who can help.
Be brave.
The Belgians and Americans are also somehow able to communicate with the Germans perfectly.
We'll take a hell of a lot of you with us.
There will be no signed orders.
As the Recon plane flies away, we get our first view of this movie's most infamous blunder, the mocked-up 1950s American M47 Patton tanks on loan from the Spanish Army, playing the part of German Tiger II tanks. The film only focuses on these Tiger II tank wannabes, even though only less than 500 were ever made in reality. The German armour in the Bulge battle consisted primarily of others that are absent from the film, such as the Panzer IV, Panther, and even assault guns and tank destroyers such as the Stug and Hetzer. All German used vehicles in the movie have the earlier warplane field grey paint scheme. By 1944, they should be painted in dark yellow, with mixes of greens and browns in different patterns such as dot line or ambush types. When it started snowing, many would also be whitewashed with lime. Hessler arrives at a ridiculously expensive underground bunker complex, full of fortified concrete corridors and luxurious offices like you would see in the Führer bunker. It also even has a massive briefing room full of ahistorical switchboards, radars, telephones, clocks, loudspeakers, and so on. This place resembles those rocket bases from the Wolfenstein video games more than anything Germany built on the front lines in reality. All of this over-the-top nonsense is here simply to elevate the Germans to a level of superiority in order to make our American characters look more heroic for defeating them. In true old war movie fashion, the German uniforms and gear are terrible imitations, especially the ones on the enlisted men. The soldiers are wearing shiny M35 Stahlhelms like it's the 1930s or very early stages of World War II. At this stage, all helmets would have matte textured paint jobs to reduce light glint in combat. We should also see other German Stahlhelm variants at this stage, like the M40 without the vent hole bushing, and the M42 with the unrolled edge. In addition, soldiers in the field would have variations of camouflage, from different vehicle paints to coating them with lime to blend in with the snow, but we never see this practice in the movie. The helmets have the national tricolour decal of the German Empire. High Command mandated against the use of this helmet insignia in 1940. The helmets also have the German hair decal on the opposite side, which was discontinued in October of 1943. Since this movie takes place in late 1944, we should mostly see German helmets with no decals at all. The wool Feldgrau uniforms just look awful, with clearly wrong, oversized and weird looking collar Litzen and breast eagles. Their web gear, including the white straps, barely resemble what they should. All Germans in the movie wear the black leather jackboots instead of the more common low boots and gaiters. Nearly all German sentries appear to be members of the Feldgendarmerie, judging by the gornets. Having a few of these men patrolling a base wouldn't be unusual, but they would not all act as sentries on guard duty. Far too many of the German privates carry MP40 SMGs instead of more common Kart 98K rifles. Only officers, NCOs, and sometimes assistant squad leaders would carry MP40s.
Field Marshal Göring himself gave me that painting.
Hermann Göring had no longer been a field marshal for years now. He was promoted to the rank of Reichsmarschall back in 1940.
Our latest airplane, a jet.
Jets would not be considered new to the Germans by this stage. They had been testing jet-powered military aircraft since the late 1930s. The most produced German jet of World War II, the Me-262, had already made its first flight in 1942 and was put into service in April 1944. The model of jet in General Kohler's office here does not even resemble any used by Germany in World War II.
Within 6 months, we will have enough jet fighters to shoot down every Allied plane there.
The general seems to be spouting propaganda, which was believed by many in the Wehrmacht, but I still feel it is important to correct it nonetheless. Germany never had the capacity to have jet fighters made in such ridiculously large amounts so quickly. Only less than 1,500 Me-262s were ever produced throughout World War II due to various reasons, including lack of resources, logistical issues, and the fact that the technology was too little too late.
Our V-1 rocket destroyed 20% of London.
No, it did not. The only successful V-1 bombing on London was during the 15th to the 16th of June 1944, when 144 missiles reached England, of which 73 struck London, while 53 struck Portsmouth and Southampton. Following this attack, the Allies had received extra countermeasures for the V-1 threats, such as better radar and tracking equipment, fire control systems, etc. After the initial attack in June, 17% of future assaults would be thwarted, and would increase to 60% by August 1944.
The V-2 will utterly smash the city.
The V-2 rocket had already been introduced and in mass use since September of 1944. It makes no sense for him to be implying that these haven't been used on a large scale yet.
The new 70-ton King Tiger tank.
Again, with this repeated nonsense of everything being new. The Tiger II, also known as the King Tiger, had already been deployed and saw fighting since the Battle of Normandy in July 1944. Yet everyone in the movie, including the Americans, act as if they are just seeing it for the first time.
Better send us along to headquarters anyway, Pritchard. There seem to be some new features on that tank.
Hands up! Hey, no! Hold it! Put him up! Stand against the wall! Put him up, General!
Well, boys, looks like we've caught ourselves a couple of big fish. One nice fat crop trout.
That's enough now. People,
Achtung! Sorry, General. We are just rehearsing a commando raid.
These undercover Germans are based on the actual commandos of Operation Greif, who snuck behind enemy lines during the Ardennes offensive to conduct sabotage and disruption. They did not carry out raids on bases, however, and this reckless exercise drill of them storming in to disarm German sentries and pointing guns in people's faces would be a great way for someone to accidentally get killed. Operation Greif was commanded by the Waffen-SS, specifically under Otto Skorzeny, not the Heer or Army as seen here. All of the shown characters in the movie are fictional, which is acceptable, as this is not a biographic film, and due to a legal battle in 1964 between Warner Brothers and Columbia Pictures, the filmmakers were prohibited from depicting real historical figures. There was nothing stopping them from at least getting the branch of German military correct, however. The American M1 helmets throughout the film are post-war versions that have not been made to look like World War II era ones. They should have a layer of cork in their paint all across and thus not shine as much. The chin straps also have post-war hinges on them. All of the commandos are wearing cartridge belts, even if they carry carbines or SMGs. This could have just meant to be an oversight by the Germans though. What is more pressing is that the M1 carbines seen throughout the movie are the variants with the bayonet lugs and adjustable rear sights. These wouldn't start showing up until later in 1945. Several times, the German soldiers are called to attention by someone saying Achtung.
Achtung! Achtung!
This word was normally used as a warning. The actual German military stand to attention command is stillgestanden. The German commando disguised as an American lieutenant suddenly gives a ridiculously executed Sieg Heil salute. What is this? A G.I. Joe greeting the Führer? Nearly every salute is done incorrectly with a quick up and down motion. The enlisted man or lesser grade officer is supposed to hold the salute until returned. Everyone learns that in basic training.
Major Diebel commands the Panzer Grenadiers attached to the 1st Tank Brigade.
The 1st Tank Brigade did not exist anymore. They reformed into the 1st Panzer Division in 1935 and did not take part in the Battle of the Bulge, being on the Eastern Front at the time. The actual commandos worked with the SS Panzer Brigade 150. Major von Diepel and later Conrad are seen wearing Feldgrau Panzer Wraps. These uniforms were mainly worn by members of the Panzer Lehr Division, as well as by Sturmgeschütz and Panzerjäger crews. None of these roles fit with these two Panzer Corps soldiers. The green Waffenfarbe on the major's shoulder straps and the Südtasche on his garrison cap indicate that he is a Panzer Grenadier, yet his collar Litzen has the black stripes of a pioneer. The major also, for some reason, carries an American M1911 pistol in his pocket with an attached sling hanging from his neck. It would make more sense for him to just have a standard German Walter P38 or Luger P08 pistol in a holster.
Major Diebel kindly explain Operation Transit to the Colonel.
It was called Operation Greif, not Transit. Why did they change the name? The movie seems to just be fictionalizing details for no particular reason.
The soldiers will be parachuted behind the American lines.
The Operation Greif commandos did not parachute behind the American lines. They instead followed the breakthrough units and attempted to blend in ahead of them on land.
Their mission? To disrupt enemy communications. We have organized many such teams. Each will be led by a man who has actually lived in America. Schumacher here lived in Texas for 12 years before returning to the fatherland. To carry off this great deception, even their reflexes must be American.
The linguistic abilities of the German commandos are extremely exaggerated. Out of the 2,500 men that volunteered for the mission, only 10 could speak perfect English and had knowledge of US idioms, while 30 to 40 more could speak good English but had no slang knowledge. 120 to 150 spoke decent English, but the remaining 2,000 men could not speak fluent English, only knowing a few phrases or simple words.
And we will have even more significant weapons. Weapons which can destroy an entire city with a single blast.
The general is very likely referring to an atomic bomb here. The Germans were nowhere near production of any nuclear weapon.
From Spitsbergen, Norway. The northernmost weather station in the world. I've been waiting 2 months for this report.
A low-pressure area over northern Europe starting December 16th.
The low-pressure wave from December 16th was reported to have come in from the northwest Atlantic. The weather station in Spitsbergen, Norway would not have the range to detect this.
I'm putting you in command of our armored spearhead.
The German unit that spearheaded the armoured assault on the Ardennes with Tiger IIs was Kampfgruppe Piper of the 1st SS Panzer Division. It was also this unit that were the culprits of the Malmedy massacre and the attack on Amblève, which are depicted later in the movie. Just like the Operation Greif Commandos, this Waffen-SS unit is shown in the movie to consist of a bunch of fictional Heer characters. And speaking of them, the Operation Greif Commandos did not even have anything to do with the 1st SS Panzer Division. They did not operate together under the same command like the movie shows. We then move to what is supposed to be the village of Amblève. Its representation in the movie looks nothing like it should, as it is actually just the Spanish village of Balsaín. The place is also shown containing a large US force with a division headquarters, when there is no evidence that this was the case. The village in reality was only very lightly defended at this time. Exactly what division this headquarters and its soldiers are supposed to be of is never specified in the movie. Looking at the uniforms does not even help either, as none of them have divisional insignia, despite being standard practice in this theatre. Amblève was under the jurisdiction of the 99th Infantry Division during this period. Most of the Dodge trucks in the movie are the M37 version from 1951. The earlier 1942 Dodge WC-52 and WC-54 appear later in the film, so I am not sure why they did not just use those models universally. The vast majority of the Jeeps throughout the movie are the Willys Overland CJ3A, a 1949 vehicle made for the civilian market. The period-correct Willys MB Jeep also appears in some scenes, so again, why was that version not just used instead? All of the American vehicles have 1960s Spanish Army camo patterns instead of the correct olive drab paint. We see that markings have been added to the American vehicles, though they look horrible. The Allied star is too small and is missing the ring outline. The bonnet serial markings have a lack of digits, and the USA acronym is mispositioned and missing the A. The American vehicles also have unit markings for a completely fictional 894th Armoured Division. There were only 16 armoured divisions active in the US Army during World War II. They numbered nowhere even close into the hundreds. The US military policemen are wearing white webbing and helmets. These were more for parade usage. Military police in the field at this time would just be wearing the usual army webbing. The servicemen in the headquarters have an absurd amount of commendations, including rare ribbons for medals just below the Medal of Honor, like the Distinguished Service Cross and Silver Star. Some of these barely even make an ounce of sense for an infantry commander in Europe to have, like the Distinguished Flying Cross Medal ribbon with the attached V, awarded for acts of heroism or extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight, as well as the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal ribbon with 3 stars attached for service in all campaigns of the Pacific Theatre. Meanwhile, this ribbon of the Army Commendation Medal is outright anachronistic, since it was not awarded until December of 1945.
Counterintelligence picked this up from an enemy agent, dated November 29th. From Field Marshal Keitel, most secret. Officers and men who speak English are wanted for special mission. Volunteers will report to General Kohler's headquarters.
There was indeed an order requesting English speakers for Operation Greif, but it was issued by Wehrmacht High Command on the 25th of October 1944, and was picked up by the Allies a few days later, not in late November as claimed by General Gray here.
This is from headquarters, Kylie. Top secret.
No, it is clearly marked secret. Top secret is a higher level of confidentiality. Also, this whole cover page system with the colored borders is from the Cold War. US confidential file covers in World War II looked more basic. The printed photograph of Hessler that Kylie shows to the general is a far too clear and high quality close-up to have been taken from a moving spotter plane. On the general's desk is Inherit the Wind, a play not debuted until 1955. Colonel Hessler's gabardine tunic has weird bluish-grey buttons. They should be silver buttons instead. The shoulder boards on Conrad's Panzerwrap show he is an Unterfeldwebel, which is about equivalent to a US Staff Sergeant. Despite this, he is called a corporal in the movie.
My corporal is waiting outside. He's at a hard drive.
Even though they gave Conrad pink striped Litzen to show that he is a Panzertruppen, this branch Litzen would have been phased out in 1937. Instead, he should have the black Totenkopf collar tabs with pink lining of the Heer Panzer Corps.
4 years ago, my panzers overran Poland in 1 week. That was no illusion.
The invasion of Poland occurred in 1939, which was 5 years before this movie's setting, not 4. Also, it took the German, Slovakian and Soviet invaders 35 days to take Poland, not 1 week.
Today, I was given a brigade of Tiger tanks.
Tiger tanks never operated in brigades, and were strictly only assigned to heavy tank battalions. We will notice at many points during the movie, the Germans will refer to some of the tank units as tank brigades. However, many panzer brigades were mostly 2 to 3 companies of tanks totaling around 50 tanks, not the insinuated massive amount that the film tries to portray.
I want to see my tank commanders. Have them assembled at once.
Your commander, sir.
Boys. Too many boys.
The first battle will turn them into men.
In the old days, I lived at least 6 months with my men before going into action. I knew them, they knew me. These are strangers. Too many boys.
German heavy tanks would not be allocated to a bunch of fresh, inexperienced crewmen. In reality, the Tiger II tanks were given to Joachim Peiper's Kampfgruppe due to them having the most experienced tankers. In addition, the crewmen being regarded as novice commanders does not match with the uniform articles they are wearing here. A number of them have commendations including Iron Crosses as well as Panzer and Wound badges, so have clearly seen plenty of combat. Several of them are also not commanders, as they have enlisted rank insignia. Almost all of them have collar piping on their panzer wraps. This had stopped being applied early in World War II. We should not be seeing so much of it by late 1944. They are all wearing what seem to be Kriegsmarine or Navy sweaters under their panzer wraps. Considering that they are being lined up for inspection here, they should have the standard grey undershirts and neckties. In such a scenario, they would also definitely be wearing their caps and belts, though these are not seen on them here. Despite this movie popularizing the Panzer lead song, this famous scene shows the tankers incorrectly singing, or rather lip-syncing, only the first verse and repeating it several times. Quite the irony. We begin to see some of the US commanding officers wearing green nylon greatcoats from the 1950s. They should have either the Mackinac Jeep coat or the same brown wool greatcoat worn by the Jeep driver here. The terrain is suddenly filled with snow. The heavy snow did not start until the 16th of December, when the German offensive began, not before. The snow is also extremely inconsistent throughout the movie, likely due to them filming in different times of the year. In some scenes it is prevalent, but in others it is completely gone. We are introduced to Sergeant Guffey, a tank commander of one of the movie's supposed M4 Shermans. The tank in question is actually the M24 Chaffee, which was only recently introduced in late 1944. Just 34 were serving in France with Patton's Third Army, and only 2 detached Chafees served with the 740th Tank Battalion, which saw active combat during the Battle of the Bulge. The American tank crewmen are wearing terribly reproduced headgear. They look like someone chopped off the flaps of leather aviator caps and stapled them onto some plastic toy helmets, in a poor attempt to recreate a proper M1938 tanker helmet. The American tankers have ahistorical goggles that look like post-war plastic motorcycle ones. Proper American goggles would include the Polaroid number 1021. Kylie arrives at another couple large German bunkers on the front line, one of which has been recently occupied by US forces. This makes little to no sense, as the Americans had not broken through the bunkered Siegfried line, and the Maginot bunkers did not reach the Ardennes. If this were an accurate depiction of American lines in the Ardennes, they would just be foxholes dug throughout the woods.
Germans?
This is the up-front front.
Why are these Germans just openly exercising on the front line? And why are the Americans not immediately shooting at them? At one stage, Sergeant Duquesne tries to take potshots at them, but is actively ordered not to by his comrades.
Oh, now what do you want to do that for, Sarge? You know they're out of range, only shoot back with something heavier.
It's you or them, dogface. I need practice.
That's enough, Sergeant. You want to play with that pop gun, you can go outside.
It is only hours later upon sundown that they finally decide to go up and capture the Germans. When Lieutenant Colonel Kiley enters the bunker, no one stands to attention except for Sergeant Duquesne, who also throws up another hasty salute. He shouldn't do this, since the only time you salute indoors is when you are reporting directly to a superior. A number of the Americans, including Sergeant Duquesne, have a scoped M1 Garand. The scope is covering the receiver, which means the end block and casings would not be able to eject properly. This could be a very bad attempt at recreating an M1C or M1D Garand, but even then, these hardly saw any action during World War II. On the walls of the bunker are pictures of Rita Hayworth from the 1946 movie Gilda. Lieutenant Weaver is reading the April of 1964 issue of Playboy magazine. The German rifles throughout the movie are actually Spanish M43 Mausers. The standard Kar 98K as well as the common Gewehr 41 and 43 rifles never make an appearance.
What's this?
Still has grease in the barrel. It's never been fired.
Colonel Pritchard should not be surprised upon the sight of an STG-44. This assault rifle entered service in 1943, and these Americans would have encountered plenty since Normandy. One of the German prisoners is wearing a ski mask contemporary to the film's shooting. It is likely meant to be a winter head toque. While playing through video games, one unfortunate thing of note is their often steep prices, even for older titles. But this is where our sponsor G2A comes in to help. G2A is an online marketplace that offers all kinds of games, software, DLCs, gift cards and other digital entertainment at great prices with instant delivery. For example, this copy of Battlefield 6 going for a mere $35, a near 60% decrease when compared to its usual price of around $80. October has even brought a special monthly campaign for shooters on G2A, meaning it is an especially great time to find deals on FPS titles across all major platforms, including PC, consoles and mobile devices. So to save money on your favorite games and items, check out G2A by clicking the links in the top of the description and pinned comment. Now, back to the inaccuracies. The Ardennes offensive is shown beginning with the Operation Greif commandos performing their fictional parajump behind enemy lines. They are suddenly dressed as American military police with US-style parachutes and all. The actual commandos just wore regular US Army uniforms. A lot of them also had Fallschirmjäger jump smocks over their disguises before they went into enemy lines. The close-up shots of the airplane door look like it's a German Junkers Ju-52 3M, but the zoomed out shots show an American C-53 Skytrooper. The commandos all land together right next to each other. Jumping one at a time out of a plane flying hundreds of kilometers an hour meant they would end up much more scattered and have to regroup. Despite being a tank commander, Hessler is now wearing an NCO side cap instead of the classic Crusher cap. Even though the apparatus and paint scheme they are on are completely inappropriate, there were unit markings put on the German vehicles, but only the 3-digit ones without any of the symbols for the division and so on. Most of the markings were also clearly thrown on without proper research put into them. Hessler's tank is marked OR-01, the common mark for the regimental commander's adjutant. Since Hessler is the regimental commander, if this tank was to be marked at all, it should be marked OR-00. The rest of the Tiger II wannabes have the standard platoon, company and individual tank numbers, though some are too high. For instance, this one has the number 116, which would indicate it's the 6th tank of the 1st platoon 1st company. However, most tank squads would operate in groups of 4 per squad, ergo it shouldn't have the number 6. Having seemingly been inspired by staged German propaganda footage of tanks, the filmmakers made the insane amount of Tiger II wannabes drive way too close to each other. This goes firmly against tank doctrine, as one single artillery barrage could take out several tanks this way. They should drive in a column on the road with plenty of space between them. American M3s appear as the only German used half-track throughout the movie. At first I thought these were supposed to represent the captured vehicles used by Panzer Brigade 150, but these were disguised in American markings, whereas the ones in the movie have German paint and insignia. Regular German units did capture and use some of these like this, but only rarely. Standard German half-tracks like the SD-KSZ 251 or 250 would be far more common. What even is this mobile office thing being towed by the half-track? Again, in these old war movies, the Germans are on another planet when it comes to their supplies and equipment. Nothing like this existed for German commanders on the front lines. Most of the German soldiers haphazardly followed the tanks on foot from the beginning of the advance. Doing this would have slowed the tanks down to a crawl. In reality, they travelled in half-tracks, trucks, or on the tanks themselves. The Germans head towards the combat zone woefully under-equipped and in mostly simple non-winter uniforms. They lack a lot of standard gear like the entrenching tools, canteens, bread bags, zeltbands and mess kits. The weather for the 16th of December 1944 was heavy snowstorms and temperatures dropping to -12 degrees Celsius. The Germans had learnt from their lessons on the Eastern Front and did provide much better winter uniforms in the form of coats and camouflage parkas. The King Tiger stand-ins are shown smashing through the American lines with great speed and efficiency. The terrain of the actual Ardennes meant small narrow roads and country lanes. Many Germans were stuck in traffic. Once one vehicle was stopped on the narrow roads, it would stop the entire advance until the vehicle was cleared. As a matter of fact, Kampfgruppe leader Piper disliked the King Tigers a lot because of their huge weight and tendency to break down in the Ardennes. He even put most of them in the back of his armor columns so they wouldn't hold up the lighter vehicles. The Americans are awoken to the surprise that enemy tanks are suddenly at their positions. The German offensive actually started with a 90-minute artillery barrage that rained down on the American positions across an 80-mile front. The barrage is completely absent from the film. The American soldiers show a distinct lack of winter gear, as well as webbing, ammo pouches, haversacks, entrenching tools, and fighting knives. The ones wielding SMGs are also mostly wearing rifle cartridge belts. The 1950s era M7A3 is seen as the M1 Garand attached grenade launcher rather than the period M7. The grenades they attach to the launchers are Spanish M61 heat grenades, which look nothing like World War II era American rifle grenades. Their motors are Spanish 81mm M1933s, which of course should be American M1 motors instead. These motors are also being set up and used directly on the front line, way below their minimum effective range. Their rocket launchers are Spanish M65s instead of era-correct bazookas. Due to them being M47 patents, the German-used tanks have American M1919A4 machine guns in the hulls. The barrels of them are capped with conical blank adapters. We will notice a number of times throughout the movie that mirrored shots are shown for some reason, making things incorrectly appear on the opposite side. For example, the hull MGs are seen on the tank's left side instead of the right here. The Mark II hand grenades are erroneous black painted reproductions, instead of the proper olive green ones with the yellow band under the fuse. A number of US soldiers wield captured German MP40s, which would be very rare to see. It would have made much more sense for them to have the M1A1 Thompson, which actually never appears in this movie despite being a standard SMG. The action scenes are very unconvincing. Pretty much nothing is receiving bullet holes. The soldiers fall with ridiculous over-the-top acting. Some of the weapons are not even using blanks, resulting in them having no muzzle flash or ejected casings. Bad pyrotechnics sees explosions going off delayed, what should be easy shots landing way off target, and random blasts going off with no visible cause. In fairness to the filmmakers, this was the norm for war movies in the 1960s that were limited by the special effects and CGI of their time, so we shall just throw all this dated, unrealistic action into one point and move on. American tanks arrive, but in far too little numbers. Only 2 show up in this scene to counter the Germans, and later we see just a single one heading towards the enemy at a bridge. US tanks were operated in units, the smallest of which being a platoon of 5 tanks. They would often be accompanied by infantry too. When the tanks start engaging each other, they do so at ridiculously close ranges. Actual tank fights occurred at much larger distances of hundreds of meters apart. The tanks are shown firing their cannons while in motion. The M24 Chaffees and later model Shermans were equipped with stabilizers on their guns to allow firing on the move when needed, but it was still not advisable to do so. The Tiger IIs and the M47 patterns that represent them, on the other hand, did not have gun stabilizers. Their crewmen were trained to fire the cannon only when stationary, as the bumping from the terrain could cause the cannon to lift or lower by inches, sending the shot possibly miles off the intended target. Ah yes, the infamous German armor tactic of ramming enemy tanks. Pretty sure the transmission would give out if a Tiger II tried to push a multi-ton tank off the road. The same thing can be said for the tank that shoves another off a bridge later. The very out-of-place British Sten Mark II appears among the Americans. An appropriate replacement weapon could be the M1918A2 BAR, which, like the Thompson, strangely does not appear in the movie despite how common it was.
We must cross the Our River before the enemy realizes we have launched an all-out offensive.
Okay, Hessler, but you are pointing towards the French border on the west of Belgium, the opposite side of the country to where the Our River is located. The radio in the German command vehicle is an American Helicrafter's SX-28. Not only is it out of place, but it is also a receiver incapable of transmitting like it does in the movie. Hessler and his men's decision to ride through enemy territory in this ridiculous metal mobile box instead of their armored tanks is tested when it hits a mine.
They're all dead. The mine exploded directly under them.
How exactly did the mine trigger directly below the trailer instead of the heavier half-track towing it?
And have my vehicle repaired at once!
And why would you want to repair and continue riding around in that unarmored thing that almost got you killed? Whatever, movie.
Watch the Our River. There's only one bridge right here that can support heavy tanks.
This is just false. German armored columns crossed the Our River and many different places along the Belgian and German border. There were even 2 suitable bridges at the village of Oren, which was held by the American 28th Division for a significant time against German attacks. Among the Americans, we see what is assumedly supposed to be an M7 Priest, but is actually a post-war M37 howitzer. We can even see that the 50 cal machine gun has a muzzle brake on it, which wasn't done during World War II.
Somebody's been monkeying around those road signs, Lieutenant. That ain't the road to Amblève.
2 hours ago, I came here from Amblève over this exact same road. Now, maybe they've moved Amblève in the meantime, but 2 hours ago, this was the road to it.
Take off, Duquesne.
Lieutenant, I'm telling
Lieutenant, tell your sergeant to get this jeep out of here, will you?
The primary goal of the Operation Greif Commandos was to sow chaos and confusion within American lines, and they did move road signs to do so, but they did not literally stand around a convoy pointing American troops in the wrong way. As we stated before, most of them barely spoke proper American English, not to mention the illogicality of them randomly switching to German in front of the Americans at times. Since the signs are twisted, that means the Americans are coming from the east. Being east at 42 kilometers from Malmedy and 36 kilometers from Amblève would place them several kilometers inside of Germany. The American walkie-talkie throughout the movie is the 1960s era ANPRC-6. This was the successor to the SCR-536 handy talkie used in World War II.
Well, I'm sure loaded with C4. Can you use any?
C4 was not developed until 1956. US Army men during World War II would refer to their plastic explosives as Composition C. The radio Kylie uses in the back of this Jeep does not match with the SCR-610 that it should be.
Over now.
Over and out is a common Hollywood erroneous term. Standard radio procedure would see one just say out when ending the transmission with no response expected. The Sherman wannabe that shows up to the bridge has the nickname of Kraut Killer. Tank nicknames were usually linked to the tank's company, so this nickname suggests there's a K company which did not exist in reality. There were only 9 companies in a tank regiment, able through item. The machine gun on top of Kraut Killer is a 50 caliber Browning AN M2 variant for airplane turrets, wing mounts and gun pods. It should be the standard M2 heavy Browning we already seen in the movie. The tank driver is seen using his throat mic to communicate at a long range out of the tank.
What? Are you sure? Watch out, the MPs are Krauts!
It would make more sense if the movie showed the tank's radio man calling this message out from the SCR. Hessler was earlier shown referring to his tanks by their numbers, which made sense.
I got the tank 104, tank 104.
But now he suddenly comes up with ridiculous call signs for them.
I got the tank Leopard and Panther, blast that tank off the bridge.
Yes, Hessler, call your tank Tiger and call your subordinate Tiger tanks Panther and Leopard. I'm sure that won't be confusing at all. The M1 rifle Kylie uses here is missing the rear sight and adjusting knobs. Good luck trying to snipe anything with that thing. The German truck that Kylie shoots at is an MAN 550L, yet another Cold War era vehicle. The Opel Blitz would be more suitable. The miniature tanks on the map table in the German war room do not match up at all with any unit movements during the Ardennes offensive. The camera even zooms in on the Germans successfully capturing the village of Malmedy. In reality, it remained held by American forces throughout the battle. The movie then depicts the infamous Malmedy massacre, which saw a Kampfgruppe Piper soldiers summary execute American prisoners of war at the Bonia crossroads. It opens with an undersized group of US POWs being disorganizedly gathered in a field. In reality, around 120 men, mostly from the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion, were lined up in 4 rows within a farmer's field. For this scene alone, the filmmakers finally decided to include Waffen-SS soldiers, but they are illogically seen operating among Heer forces despite being an entirely different branch in the German military. Just like the Heer soldiers, their uniforms are poorly recreated. The colours on the SS helmet decals are swapped. And they are wearing oversized and likely fictional cuff titles instead of the actual ones worn by Kampfgruppe Piper personnel of the 1st SS Panzer Division. For some reason, the NCOs and COs are operating the MG42s, while the much lower ranked privates assist, with one of them even casually throwing up a hand signal as if he's a commander. The Waffen-SS soldiers are seen opening fire while in a couple post-war Mercedes-Benz L-series trucks. In reality, the massacre began with machine gun fire from 2 German personnel carriers. The movie shows just the two machine guns quickly disposing of the Americans while the surrounding Heer soldiers do not shoot at all. The massacre in reality was quite a bit more horrid than this. The movie does not show the Germans finishing off wounded GIs with shots to the head, or setting a building on fire where some of them had fled and then killing the Americans as they tried to escape the flames. Even columns of other German vehicles firing their machine guns while they passed the field. It also only focuses on the fictional Lieutenant Weaver character as a survivor and neglects the over 40 actual survivors who managed to escape or play dead in the field. The Germans arrived to attack Amblève, though this timeline of events does not match up. Amblève is located further east in Malmedy and was already taken before the massacre took place, not after. The movie depicts Amblève as being a key village where a massive battle occurs. Afterwards, Hessler even claims that he lost a large amount of forces by taking it.
I have lost 17 tanks and a battalion of men leveling Amblève for the sole purpose of reducing the enemy's will to fight.
As aforementioned, in reality, Amblève was only lightly defended, and so was quickly overrun on December 17, 1944. Hessler now has the ahistorical goggles that the American tankers have in the movie. Correct German ones would encompass the anti-dust and motorcycle goggles.
I'm holding at Amblève, but I can't last long without heavy stuff. Now, what can you let me have? 155s will do the trick. Where are they? On flat cars. Are we still holding the rail line? Good. Now, when can you get them here? Well, not later, Fred. We're counting on you.
This whole sequence of the train delivering guns for the defense of Amblève has no historical basis. The Allies barely used trains on the Western Front and would be able to use trucks to muster up much more artillery than the two measly guns seen here. The train then getting destroyed by German armour makes even less sense. If these are cannons coming up from the rear lines, then how did the Germans bypass Amblève? If they are not coming from the rear but instead somewhere else along the front line, then why would they risk a train going perpendicular to the German advance? Among the Americans on the train is the French post-war MAT-49 submachine gun. Since these are likely supposed to be rearguard soldiers, an older weapon like the M1903 Springfield rifle would be a better alternative. The close-up shots of the railway show anachronistic electronic overhead lines that steam trains would not need. The battle starts with the Spearhead Tiger wannabes providing indirect fire bombardment with their high-velocity guns.
Line battalion, take up bombardment position.
Did the filmmakers even know how tanks work? The Germans would use regular artillery for this, like howitzers and naval Werfers. Many of the Germans get killed as they are stupidly running around the place completely exposed out of cover. Even the tank commanders are seen up and out of their hatches, resulting in them getting hit with enemy fire. The Americans set up howitzers in front of their line for direct fire. Artillery like this should be put in batteries a significant distance behind the front line. The howitzers themselves are also outdated smaller caliber ones. American M5 anti-tank guns would be more appropriate to use in such a setting.
Come on, soldier up front, leave him to the men.
I'm in the Air Corps.
You're in the infantry now, follow me.
Okay, there are layers of problems here. Firstly, the United States Army Air Corps did not exist anymore. It became the United States Army Air Force in 1941. Secondly, why on earth would an aerial personnel even be here? There was no airbase in the Amblève village. And thirdly, this fella is not even in an aerial uniform, but rather a regular infantry one. A very poor attempt was made to create a Volkswagen Kubelwagen here. It looks like a bunch of unproportionate metal sheets slapped onto the chassis of a post-war French Citroën 2CV.
A chocolate cake.
Well?
It was taken from a captured American private, still fresh. If you look at the wrapping, General, you will see it comes from Boston.
And?
General, do you realize what this means? It means that the Americans have fuel and planes to fly cake across the Atlantic Ocean. They have no conception of defeat.
This is a widespread myth spread by this movie. US forces in the Battle of the Bulge faced massive logistic issues, particularly at the start of the offensive. Some forward units experienced severe temporary shortages of essential items, particularly artillery, ammunition, food, and medical supplies. The privates absolutely did not have fresh whole chocolate cakes being flown to them. The white charges the Americans stick onto this tank are completely ahistorical. Actual American World War II TNT charges look like this.
What is this, Foot?
It's the best this town has to offer.
I've told you before, tanks run on petrol and soldiers run on rations. I must eat as my men do so I know how far they can go. Take it away.
Your usual ration, sir.
I can guarantee you that the German usual rations in late 1944 would not include such a large piece of red-crusted cheese.
Stragglers you've captured tell me that helpless American prisoners have been massacred.
Where?
Malmedy.
While the news of the Malmedy massacre reached the US command and then the rest of the rank and file quickly, it's unlikely for American prisoners to know about it this fast. The movie also focuses on what happened at the Bonnier Crossroads only, without mentioning any of the other atrocities conducted by the Waffen-SS units invading through the northern sector. They were responsible for the deaths of around 350 POWs and hundreds of civilians in total. One of these war crimes even occurred at a junction just 2 kilometers east of Amblève, where 11 African Americans from the 333rd Artillery Regiment were summarily executed.
General, is it true that American prisoners were executed at Malmedy?
There are SS units in the Malmedy sector. I can't assume responsibility for every soldier on this front.
Do you realize the consequences of this act? This massacre will stiffen resistance to us everywhere. It will turn a demoralized mob into avenging soldiers.
The Malmedy massacre and the attack on Amblève were both conducted by Kampfgruppe Piper, the same unit under the same command. The movie trying to divert blame and incorrectly depicting the Kampfgruppe as a moral standing Heer unit is starting to feel more and more disrespectful.
You are to reach Saint-Michel by 1600 tomorrow. Be there.
There was no Saint-Michel in this area of the Ardennes. There is a Barak Michel, but even this was many kilometers north of Amblève, well out of the path of Kampfgruppe Piper.
Where are we going to stop and put up the fight?
At our last line of defense, the River Meuse. We'll cross it and dig in on the west bank. At least we'll get the Germans wet.
This doesn't even come close to what happened in real life. The US Army did not pull back to the Meuse as a last line of defense. It's called the Battle of the Bulge for a reason. The American defense held strong around the entirety of the Bulge. The Meuse was only at the far western tip and was held by British forces, mainly of the 30 Corps, who would be relieved by the American 2nd Armored Division. The Germans never reached the river, and Kampfgruppe Piper did not even come close.
Why, you ugly jerk!
Why would the soldier openly smack Guffey into the mud during a retreat? Any commander would absolutely reprimand this man immediately, if not worse. The movie even shows the general and his officers overseeing this all, and they do nothing. We are brought to the siege of Bastogne. The defending 101st Airborne paratroopers are shown all just wearing the same generic uniforms as the regular army soldiers, including the brown M37 wool pants which they would not have. Airborne soldiers in this battle wore full M43 uniforms with equipment standard to them like the musette bag and shortened T-shovel. Among the paratroopers is a sign which has, quote, "The Bloody Bashers of Bastogne" written on it. Really? First of all, it was the Battered Bastards of Bastogne, and secondly, they were only referred to this after the Battle of the Bulge was over.
The German commander wishes to communicate with the American commander of the encircled town of Bastogne.
He's a little busy right now. What's on your mind?
From the German commanding general to the commander of the American troops fighting in Bastogne. With the changing fortunes of war, the USA forces in and around Bastogne have become completely surrounded by superior German armored units. The only possibility to spare the American troops from total annihilation is their honorable surrender, which will also prevent the slaughter of helpless civilians. You have 1 hour of truce to reply.
Blindfold him. Take him up to the command post.
The delivery of the German surrender ultimatum to the US 101st Airborne Forces on December 22nd, 1944 played out quite a bit differently than this. It occurred near the Arlong Road among American foxhole positions in front of the Kessler farm, rather than the ruins we see in the movie. It saw 4 Germans, 2 officers and 2 NCOs, approach with a couple white flags and a briefcase, not 3 men with 1 flag. The Germans did not read out the ultimatum message in front of the enemy enlisted men like this, but rather just just said they had a message for their commanders before being brought to them. The ultimatum message itself was quite a bit longer in reality, and gave them 2 hours to reply rather than the 1 hour provided in this scene. The 2 officers were brought up to the American command with their own blindfolds. It was not one officer given a blindfold by the Americans. And finally, during the blindfolding, a German-speaking medic offered to serve as an interpreter, but this is not seen in the movie either. General Kohler is depicted overseeing the attack on Bastogne, and even receiving the famous quote, "nuts" one-word response from Brigadier General Anthony Mikhailov.
From the American commander of Bastogne to the German commander. Nuts.
This does not make sense, as the leadership of Kampfgruppe Piper and its 1st SS Panzer Division did not partake in the siege of Bastogne.
Where's the spearhead of the German advance right now?
We place it 4 miles past Amblève, moving west.
Where do you estimate they'll be at daybreak?
If they travel all night, they should be 9 miles due east of the fuel depot.
My man, you are pointing to the west of Brussels. That is around 150 kilometers northwest of Amblève.
We'll be there to meet them.
I'm committing my tanks.
What? Only now? Why wouldn't that be the first thing to do to counter an armoured offensive, you idiot? Kylie and Joe find the German armour while flying in their anachronistic Cessna aircraft. The tanks then waste their precious shells by firing their main cannons at this little spy plane, instead of, you know, their machine guns mounted for anti-aircraft purposes. For this section of the movie, we finally see some foggy weather, but it does not last long, as shortly afterwards it is depicted fully clearing.
From Spitsbergen, weather forecast. Warm front moving in. Notify all columns. Weather clearing.
The weather didn't really start to fully clear. There were a few days of improved weather from around December 24th, but the snow and fog would roll in again the following days.
Our scouts have sighted a brigade of medium tanks.
Once again, the movie fumbles its unit designation and sizes. Just like how Tiger tanks never operated in brigades, neither did any American armored forces.
Light armor at this point. Any artillery? None. And no infantry.
And they are committing their reserves. We destroy them, they have nothing between us and the fuel depot. Send all infantry to the rear.
Yes, sir.
There is no logical reason for the tanks of both sides to attack without any infantry, artillery or aerial support. This was done by the filmmakers just to have this final massive tank-on-tank battle over a fuel depot. Such an engagement did not happen during the Battle of the Bulge. The portrayal of tank combat in this scene is just laughable. No life-loving tank crew would ever position their vehicle in a row on top of a ridge like this. They're basically screaming, "Look at us, we're the big targets up here." Many of the tanks for some reason have their guns pointed at an angle up in the air, and again, all of them are fighting way too close to each other. One of the Americans even makes the ridiculous claim that they are out of effective range.
Remember, hold your fire till they're within effective range.
The enemy tanks are right there in front of you, well within range.
Butcher 1, this is Butcher 3, over.
Come in, Butcher 3, report damage, over.
I've got 1 dead and 2 wounded, but we can still fight.
My brother in Christ, your turret just blew in half and you're telling me that there was no ammo explosion and most of your crew survived with the radio still functioning too? Leave it to Hollywood to portray such brain-dead nonsense.
Baker Battalion reporting in. 2 tanks destroyed, 1 damaged, out of action. Phantom Battalion reports. 6 tanks destroyed, 9 out of action. Butcher Battalion reports.
Just like pretty much all of the call signs in the movie, the battalion names being called out here are all fictional. Among the Germans in this scene are post-war American Rio M34 trucks. Guffey's Banjax tank now has an incorrect radio. We literally just saw it having the correct SCR 508 radio, so why was it suddenly changed?
I'm warning you, Lieutenant. Stay off my tank!
Unless Sergeant Guffey is fond of getting court-martialed and or receiving a bullet in the head, then he would absolutely not threaten a commanding officer at gunpoint while he is surrounded by his men. Operation Greif Commandos are shown having secured the American fuel depot. This would and did not happen. After completing their objectives of sowing deception with the signs and securing bridges, the Commandos were to fold back in with the 150th Panzer Brigade. The fuel depot has a 1952 American La France 011A fire truck parked in it. We also see an aid station where a wounded Kylie is being treated. It goes without saying that having an aid station in the middle of a fuel depot on the front lines is not a good idea. In addition, it is a TP tent with what looks to be the Spanish post-war camouflage. This looks nothing like the tents used by the US in World War II. After the Americans take back the fuel depot from the commandos, we get one of the most egregiously cartoonish moments I have ever seen in a historical World War II movie. It sees the Americans rolling fuel barrels down to the attacking enemy armor like Donkey Kong. This then somehow causes the German heavy tanks to completely atomize. Just no movie.
Get this message through to headquarters. They've abandoned their tanks and they're walking back to Germany.
What? Could the filmmakers seriously not come up with a more suitable ending? No, this is just complete BS. The Battle of the Bulge would continue until late January of 1945. The turning point in the fight was the fact that the weather broke and allowed Allied air power to come into play. Air power which would also be the reason why German troops would never march in a dense column over an open road like this. All these men would be shot up within seconds. The closing text states that, quote, "This picture is dedicated to the 1 million men who fought in this great battle of World War II. Although estimates vary a bit, pretty much all number the total amount of men involved in the battle to be well over this figure at about 1.4 million. And so we are left with over 180 historical inaccuracies. For more, click on this video covering the similarly erroneous old movie The Big Red One. Massive thanks to fellow researchers Davidson, K9, Michael Ackerman and Fariza, as well as editor Ashen. Most of all, thank you for watching. This has been the Frosty One, out.